This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Detroit is the greatest!
Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnificent goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Thank you for downloading the latest edition of the Motor City Sports Rant. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Jason Jarvie will be calling in shortly. This is episode 199 of this fine podcast. I'm looking forward to it. Always look forward to talking to Jason Jarvie. Can't wait to recap my experiences covering the Detroit Lions at training camp. It was surreal. My first time. To be quite honest, I was nervous. I was a little bit concerned regarding how it was going to go. Was I going to be able to find the place? Was I going to be accepted? Was I going to be let in? And to be quite honest, it was the smoothest transition. It was the greatest experience because everything was done very professionally. Everything was flawless. It was great. I found the place okay. Allen Park, relatively speaking, is right up I-94. I'm able to find it. I was able to get there on time. And I think one of the greatest pieces of advice that I got was whenever you're going to a press conference or you're going to something media related, get there relatively early. Get the lay of the landscape. Understand what's going on. Don't show up if there's a press conference at 9. Don't show up at 9 because otherwise you're going to end up standing. There's going to be so many media. There's going to be others that will take precedence. And there are only so many seats. There's quite a few of them, but there are only so many seats that the media can occupy. So when you get there early, you can sit down, set up your stuff, and you can enjoy the experience. And that's what I did. And it was a surreal experience when I got there 8 a.m. I got my stuff in there, and it just felt good. It felt like, okay, here we go. Next step, let's get this. And Matt Patricia, day one, addressed the media. It was the first official practice, the first day that I got there on Thursday. And then the next day was unbelievable. The next day was one of those days where, as a podcaster, as a sports reporter, you go, okay, very good day. Fired off a question to Matt Patricia in regards to Jelani Tavai, watch practice, and then when the media availability takes place after practice, right around noon or so, the players come over and I had an opportunity to ask every player that came over a question, and that was Marvin Jones, Jelani Tavai, and TJ Hawkinson. So I was able to really dig in and ask good questions and really be part of the experience. And all in all, the experience that I had previously covering sports made it so that the transition to cover the NFL and cover the Detroit Lions was not that big a deal. I felt comfortable. The staff at the Detroit Lions made it easy. They're there. They assist. They guide the media as to where to go, what to tweet, what not to tweet. And it was a good situation in terms of the timing of what's allowed. And there are certain aspects of practice that you're not allowed to inform upon. So they don't tell you what to tweet. It's just that there are certain times that you can't take photos and things like that. So they're guiding you based on their protocol. And fine by me. I like that because there's a plethora of rules and I didn't want to break them. But the good thing is that prior to going out there, I have had developed relationships with a couple of the media members, so I could say hello, meet some people, and talk to those that I've previously interviewed on this podcast so that I can set up some training camp coverage, some training camp interviews, and it was a great experience. It was surreal. Like I said, each and every time when you do something like this, when you make a goal and there are some hurdles along the way and it takes a little bit of time to achieve those goals, sometimes, it makes it that much sweeter when you're sitting there and you're watching Matthew Stafford throw end zone passes and you're watching TJ Hawkinson make plays, you're watching the defense, you're watching everything that's going on in practice. You sit there and you're like, wow, 6 years ago I was sitting in a basement with my cousin just talking about the potential of this podcast and maybe would anybody listen to it? Would anybody download it? And then in 2015 when a good friend of the podcast, the co-host of the show, Jason Jarvie, and his bud and his friend, Vinny Stubbs, and they reach out to Adam and I, and they're like, can we put a show on? And we're like, you know what? We have one show, Doc and Jock. Why not add more? And the idea just organically came about to create a network. And because of that, I established the ability to make goals. And then when we started to meet him, we made new goals, and it was great. It's been great all along. I hope that you've enjoyed the coverage at Detroit Podcast. And at DetroitSportsPodcast.com is where you can get our training camp coverage and where you can get opinion pieces. You can get some of the questions that were asked and get some insight regarding what's going on there at training camp. But before I talk to Jason, I want to thank a great sponsor of the network, a sponsor that allows the lights to be on, the microphones to be hot here in the Sterling Heights studio. We wouldn't be able to put out daily content without the support of you guys, the fans that are downloading across the various platforms that podcasts are available, and the sponsors. And one of the great sponsors of the network is the Motor City Pawnbrokers. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of short-term cash or are looking for quality, brand-name new, and pre-owned merchandise with locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren. Their mission is to deliver exceptional value. For all the deals, for all the specials, for all information, if you're not quite sure how a pawn shop works, definitely feel free, go check out MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. Mark and the crew, they're dedicated. Because in the past, there was a stigma regarding pawnbrokers and what it's like to go into a pawn shop. Well, Mark identified that and said, hey, what's a way to build my business? What's a way to maintain a solid foundation of customers is to provide amazing, and I mean amazing customer service. When you go in there, you're not made to feel awkward. You're made to feel like a customer, and you're made to feel like a valued part of the business. And that's what makes Mark and the crew special. For all information, again, regarding the fine sponsor of the network, go check out MotorCityPawnbrokers.com today. And out there at training camp, one thing that you're recognizing is, okay, the idea that they're telling everybody after practice is they just want to get better every single day. There are certain drills that take place. There are certain situations. There's competition that's taking place. And out there at training camp, Allen Park's nice. It's a nice facility. I think it's easy to get around. I find that the vantage points are acceptable in terms of covering the lines. Now, could you be closer? Yeah. But if you have binoculars, you can go out there and see everything. And one thing that everyone's kind of noticing early on is that TJ Hawkinson has been impressive. Jelani Tavai is out there, and he's working hard and everything like that. And so I just find it that in training camp, the idea is get better. The idea is walk away from a practice without any injury. And then, obviously, when you hear news around the league and you're like, okay, you know, Mike Daniels is cut from the Green Bay Packers, and he's had a history of causing problems, and he's a disruptor there on the defense. You wonder passively to yourself, man, why not the Lions? Why don't they maybe make some inquiries about him? And then, bam, you know, he's out there, and on Saturday he signed, and Sunday out there at training camp, and you're like, whoa, there's a serious effort to identify talent. Now, is everything all perfect with Mike Daniels? No. He is coming off of a foot injury. He was cut by Green Bay, and we all know on the offensive side what happened when the last time the Detroit Lions went to Green Bay for some talent and TJ Lang didn't quite work out. But by all accounts, everybody that's looking at it, if Mike Daniels is healthy, he provides depth along that defensive line, and it's already been established that the defensive line is a strength for the Lions, and so why not add to it, especially early on when you do see some injuries, when you do see some guys going down in practice, then you have the opportunity to have new guys show up and new guys establish themselves, and hopefully when the season starts, as preseason rolls along, Mike Daniels and that defensive line can be the true strength of that team. And it'll be fascinating to talk to Jason regarding the true strength of the team. Is it going to be defense? Are we going to rely on that defense? Or is the season's success reliance upon the Detroit Lions offense? No matter what, you have to recognize the league is going towards a more offensive league. You got to score points. You got to move the football. You got to also be able to rest that defense. You can't let the opponent's offense run up and down the field, take time off the clock, because that takes away from your natural strengths in terms of the most talented individuals on the Lions, and that's Matthew Stafford. And I'm hoping that with the addition of Kerryon Johnson, his emergence, and I'm hoping that TJ Hawkinson can be an offensive weapon. I'm hoping that because of the fact that Theo Riddick was cut, that he doesn't go and burn up the league and become a real superstar, because that would, again, sting the fans of the Lions. Do you agree or disagree with Theo Riddick being cut in order to make room for Mike Daniels? I think that's one of the early talking points is like, well, why did you not potentially let him compete? Why is it that he was gone? And partly it's due to the fact that his contract potentially was higher than his worth. Did Theo Riddick have worth here for the Lions? Yes, he was productive. He was somebody that could come in and produce. He was somebody that we all saw make catches. But in this league, when you have a second-year player like Kerryon Johnson, and he potentially could do the same job, then you're going to rely on him. They're going to want, and it's based on what everyone's expecting, Kerryon Johnson is going to get a lot of touches. He's going to be a focal point of that offense, whether it be in the passing game, hopefully getting around 15 to 20 runs a game, and hopefully he is a guy that can remain durable and produce. And at the same time, that offense has to contribute. The offense has to be able to move the football, and a lot of people respected Theo Riddick because he made plays. He was a guy that, whether or not you believed in his talent, had the ability to catch the ball. But towards the end of last season, don't forget, was injury prone. There were scenarios where he was not available. And when you're not available, it's a league where, and Bob Quinn's established that, hey, if you're not going to be part of the solution consistently, if you're not going to be on the field and your cap number is becoming problematic, whack, you're going to get cut. And that's the strict nature of the business. And I think a lot of people understand that. But the Lions did Theo Riddick correct in that they cut him at a time when he can still go around the league and shop his services around. If they had cut him, if they had decided to keep him and cut him later in training camp, then he would not have had maybe the chance, the fair chance to catch on and learn another team's playbook. Now, some that have dissented will say, well, if you have an opportunity, why not wait just a week or two in camp? Maybe a team suffers a critical injury, and then maybe you could snuff out or maybe earn a third or fourth round pick. Why just give away Theo Riddick? And that's a fair complaint. That's something that you can honestly talk about in terms of the Lions. Will it come back to haunt the Detroit Lions? Many of you don't believe that. Many of you believe, okay, Zach Zenner can do the job. You have C.J. Anderson. You have the new draft pick. You have Kerryon Johnson that's going to emerge. Many people are not as upset, but some of you are. Let us know at Detroit Podcast. Do you think the cutting of Theo Riddick was hastily done, or do you think that, it's part of the business? We got Mike Daniels. In order for moves like that to happen, you have to sometimes let some people go. All right, I'm going to call up Jason, and we're going to have some great talk about the Detroit Lions. I'm looking forward to it. All right, Jason Jarvie, we're at episode 199. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Earlier in the podcast, I recapped my experience at training camp. Thank you again for the advice, but it was great in that it was relatively easy to find my way around a little bit in terms of Allen Park, because the interview room, the press room was right there near the entrance where I signed in, and then the practice field was literally right there behind the door. But yeah, I can understand you could get lost out there at Allen Park, but in terms of coverage, it was surreal to be out there, and it was a great experience. I'm sure you've seen the videos at Detroit Podcast. That Friday practice when I went out last week, I went out Thursday and Friday. Friday was a dream day. Fired off a question to head coach, fired off a question to the three players that were available, and if you were looking for some decent content, I think on Friday, the Detroit Sports Podcast put out a decent amount of good coverage, especially combined with a podcast that had a great interview with a beat writer that's in the know, and I think that's something that we can provide as well in terms of the relationships. I was so thrilled to be there, Jason. It was surreal, and not only to be there, but to be engaged. That was the most important. Was I wanted to feel like, okay, if there were some things in my mind I wanted to ask about, then I did ask, and I was able to put out some good content and some quality information for those that follow us on our Twitter page. It was good stuff.
Absolutely, man. It was it's good to see the network finally getting a chance at covering the Lions.
No doubt about it. And so the first week, we're entering into day 5 of training camp. The biggest news that was made, and I want to get your sense of it because we are now clearly establishing what this roster potentially could look like. Theo Riddick was cut from the offense in order to make way for Mike Daniels, defensive tackle, former Green Bay Packer, to come in and earn his way onto the roster. What'd you make of it? I talked earlier in regards to the pros and the cons of letting go of Theo Riddick and not potentially trading him. What did you make of it? And is there a chance, any chance, that you see Theo Riddick, going out to Denver or going out to another team and burning the Detroit Lions with his play? I think a lot of people are kind of debating it a little bit, but when you see the return, a 1-year deal for Mike Daniels, people were quite happy and quite impressed at what the Detroit Lions pulled off there.
Yeah, and if you ask me who would I rather have, Mike Daniels or Theo Riddick at this point, I got to go with Mike Daniels, because I think we are the thing that we can do right now is we have a pretty solid defense. And if we can build that up even more, I think that is going to help us more than keeping around a guy who we know what he is. He's a very good pass-catching running back, But I want to see what we got out of Kerryon Johnson, what C.J. Anderson can do. And I'm actually excited to see what we got from one of our draft picks and Ty Johnson. I think all those players are more intriguing than Theo Riddick. And while it might be you're letting go of one of Matthew Stafford's safety valves, I think it's a step in the right direction. If the right direction is what Matt Patricia's doing, it's a step in that right direction.
Yeah, what do you think Mike Daniels brings to the table? Is he a guy that will be a depth player? Is he a guy that's going to continue to be that stout run stopper? I know that the defensive line is looking to be a real strength right now of this team. And when you look at it, if everybody stays healthy, I do think there's an opportunity to pressure the quarterback and to be a top 5 NFL defense and really have a strong ability to stop the run in terms of what the strengths are for that defensive line.
I think Mike Daniels just brings versatility to this defensive line, which is already has a bounty of good players in Snacks Harrison and Ashawn Robinson and Trey Flowers and Deshaun Hand. And, he's a guy who he actually had a ton of sacks with Green Bay. So that's what I'm looking for, and that's what I want to see. I want to see him move around on this defensive line. So I think that's what he can do. I think he can bring some versatility. I think you can line him up inside, and I think you can line him up outside as well. So it's going to make the dynamic on our defensive line just much more greater. And if you have one really great aspect on your defense, then it helps the entire defense. As we've seen before is, if you have a really good defensive backfield, they give more time to the defensive line to get to the quarterback and to break up plays. But I think conversely, if you have just an amazing defensive line that can get to the quarterback, it puts the pressure on them, and it can shore up some holes that we might have.
I want to ask you this because it's being debated. Obviously, the more talent, the more depth is on that defensive side. But everybody that talks about it, everybody that evaluates it, they're saying that the success of the Detroit Lions is going to be incumbent upon Matthew Stafford and that offense. Well, I say, you know what? If the offense can get and score around 20 every game, then I think it's going to be incumbent on that defense to really lock down and be the strength of the team. And I know it's going to be tough to execute being that it's a new offensive league and the league is designed to score points. But I think if the defense can only give up 14 to 17 and that offense can be just a little bit above mediocre, I'm okay with saying that this team can rely on that defense to step up a little bit and to make plays and to cause turnovers. And sometimes it's with a defensive team, it's okay to say, you know what, we can even expect maybe 3 to 7 points from the defense in terms of causing turnovers, disruptive, being able to change the field game in terms of having field position go in the Detroit Lions' favor. I think it's fair to say that you can count on this defense potentially to elevate and do some things and become, as the season progresses, the strength of the team.
And I think you're right. The strength is going to be the defense this year, but it really is ultimately going to come down to what Matthew Stafford can do, because he has the tools. We have a reworked offensive line. It may not be the greatest, but it's an offensive line that can at least do its job. It can keep him upright, and he's not going to be running for his life. So it's going to come down to, can he make the plays, and can he get us to that point where not having to, I don't want our defense to have to be completely perfect this entire season. Like if we have to hold offenses every single game to 7 and 3 points for us to win games, like that's not good.
Well, I don't know if you've been reading, but I'm getting a little excited too in that Darrell Bevell did work with Brett Favre in Minnesota. That offense produced a lot of touchdowns, and the running game was definitely effective. So Darrell Bevell has the opportunity, has the acumen, has the skills to potentially put together that offense. The key is going to be, will they respond year one? that's the thing, because I do think a lot of pressure is taking place in terms of the fact that Matt Patricia came in, had 6 wins. Many people will be looking for more than that this season, but Darrell Bevell has experience. He's worked with some top-end QBs. He's put together some offenses that have been productive, and I think it's going to become a good fit. Now, will it be razzle-dazzle? Will it be as entertaining as we would like? No. I think it's going to be a lot of checkdowns, a lot of definitely some quick passes. There's going to be a lot of running plays. It's going to be efficient. That's going to be the thing. And so as long as they score points and they keep the time of possession in their favor, it's something that can benefit the Detroit Lions and something that, when you look at it, can be a strength and work that way. But are you reading also that potentially, Matthew Stafford could be asked to scramble more? You can see out there that Stafford's in better shape. He's in better condition. Would you want to see him kind of move outside the pocket a little bit, move that pocket and call a bunch of scramble plays and things like that, where he gets out of the pocket and changes up the dynamic of that offense? Do you think that can be okay? Or the biggest concern that people have is they're okay with it, but they want to keep Stafford upright. They feel like there's a massive risk of injury if Stafford rolls out a lot.
I'm absolutely okay with him scrambling, but and you're right. As long as he stays healthy, I'm completely fine with it. Make smart decisions, and I think he's always going to be a pass first guy, even on a scramble play. I want him to try and make that throw because he's no Mike Vick, he's no Russell Wilson. But he does have the ability to make plays with his feet. I think he has that inherent ability. So to be able to get him to utilize that, I think that's just going to be another weapon we can use on this offense to get us a couple more wins this season.
Yeah, Jason. T.J. Hawkinson has been impressive in training camp, making some plays early on, making some catches, causing his teammates to erupt and cheer him on, and he was excited by it. I think that he's come in and acclimated himself well, and the thing that you're hearing a lot of, and I get it, is the culture that they want. They want guys that are dedicated to football. And they want guys that are going to want to work every single day to get better. Every single day, do your best to get better, love football, and things like that. And I think the culture that they're trying to change is the right one. And sometimes we look at it and say that the guys didn't buy in last year. Well, if you want to look at it, maybe some of the guys that didn't buy in were guys that were going to be cut, guys that maybe didn't have the same work ethic that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn are looking for. And to a certain degree, I get it. It's super hard, man, to be dialed in and to love football day in, day out, because it's a grueling sport. You're basically involved in a car crash every single play. It's hard to, especially with outside life, with stuff going on. Kerryon Johnson, wasn't there for practice because he went to a wedding. There's stuff going on outside your life. Quandre Diggs said that it was interesting. He's like, guys, as he got through question 7 and 8, he's like, talking football is the least thing I want to talk about right now. He's like, I really want to talk about my kid. And so then the media started asking him 4 or 5 questions about his kid. And I really wanted to ask, okay, why do you want to talk about your kid? And because you know why? They're in it day in, day out. They talk about it day in, day out. And sometimes they want a reprieve. And so when you go out there and you ask for their time, they'll say, yeah, I'll get you tomorrow. I want to get home to my family, or I want to do other stuff. So I get that sense of it. The ability to grind day in, day out is super tough. But if you're a gamer and you're a guy that, and you're now realizing the code, okay? The code that they're telling the media is, I love football, I love working, I love doing that, because when you say that, I think it appeals to what management, Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn are looking for, and it's fascinating, but at the same time, it's hard to execute, to be a guy that's dialed in, day out. The younger guys can do it. The older vets, I think it's a little bit harder with family and with other attachments to be dialed in all the time, but for a team to be successful, that's what you have to have. And early on, guys like TJ, guys like Jelani Tavai, the young cats that are competing for jobs, they have that. And the guys that are brought in so far, Mike Daniels, Trey Flowers, that's the word that's being spread is, hey, we love football. We're trying to get better every single day. And it's a fair message to put out.
And, yeah, I think it's something to say is that it might be that we're finally starting to, people like these guys are finally starting to buy in a little bit into what Matt Patricia is bringing here. And, I think for a team that, has actually had more success than us, this might not have worked out for them. But I think this is what the Lions need. We need to be winning mentality. We need to get back to, loving football. And I think it's great what we're doing, what we're trying to create here. And hopefully it just pays off in the end with some wins.
Now, I do want to get your sense of this. I want to ask you because, obviously people outside of Detroit are going to make comments. Some will be positive, some will be negative. Michael Lombardi went on his own podcast and kind of talked about, for Matt Patricia to talk about culture and then potentially the way in which he's handling Danny Amendola. Now, if it plays out this way, maybe he has an argument. He's saying that if you're trying to instill a culture of competition, then, Danny Amendola potentially having an automatic job maybe sends a mixed signal to that locker room. And he went off on Matt Patricia a little bit, saying that having this notion of the Detroit Patriots is totally wrong. Establish a real culture, establish a culture of competition. But his premise was that he assumes that Danny Amendola already has a job locked in because he's a Matt Patricia guy. And something like that could seep into a locker room and say, okay, the players will say, yeah, there's this culture of competition, but if you're a Patricia guy and you're one of Patricia's boys, then you got a job. And I looked at that and I said, Danny Amendola has talent. I don't think that he'd earn a spot just based on the fact that he's Danny Amendola. I think that if you're really trying to establish the Patriot way, if he's not good enough, if he's not the top 6, 7 receiver, then he's not going to be looked at. He'll be cut. They'll find somebody else. But if you're reasonably affordable and you have a role, then it's okay. But at the same time, Michael Lombardi blasted the Lions and blasted Matt Patricia, saying that, you're establishing a fake culture because there's only one organization that can be the Patriots, and that's the Patriots.
I think Matt Patricia, so much of it has been put on that we're trying to do it the same way that the Patriots are doing it. And I think when you look at the Trey Flowers signing, that's not something that the Patriots would have done. The Patriots didn't do it that way and I think he's trying to do it his own way. And I think the notion of Patricia's guys, that's ridiculous. Danny Amendola, when I look at the roster, I do see him as the number 3 wide receiver. Who is he fighting for a roster spot right now for the number 3 wide receiver? And, I would probably take Danny Amendola as a 3rd wide receiver on a lot of teams in the NFL. So, this notion that he just has a roster spot just because he's a Patricia guy, I think that's absolutely false.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy's pretty opinionated and things like that. But it's true to form, too, that maybe the Lions are putting out this narrative that it's a Patriot way in order to kind of use a slogan that's popular. But at the same time, they are going to do it their own way. And Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia really want to make it out there so that people can really respect the Detroit Lions as an organization. And I think the culture they want to build is competition. They want to get wins, and I hope it works out. And it's just like I said, it's that fine line between a couple plays here and there that's going to determine if the Lions are going to be successful. And I can't wait to take the journey with them. It's been a fun ride. I enjoy going out there. I think there's worthwhile purpose. And if the new PR staff continues on this path, I think it's worth noting that, hey, they made everybody available. They've been friendly. Obviously, there's a lot of rules. And if you read them, there's a lot of them. But basically, it's just certain times you can't take pictures or certain times you can't report live exactly what's going on. But within reason, it's fair. You can work through it and stuff like that. And I felt like going out there was a good experience for the network. You can find our coverage of training camp at Detroit Podcast on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Look for articles, look for content, and look for training camp podcasts where we interview those that are also covering the Lions and to get insights. I'm excited for it. Training camp is fun. It's a good time. And, Jason, in 1 week from today, baby, on Monday, there's an opportunity to see greatness. Tom Brady and the New England Patriots will actually show up in Allen Park and have practices ahead of their preseason game next Thursday. I can't wait. I'll be there Monday and Tuesday. It's going to be surreal to see Tom Brady at Allen Park and then to see how it plays out. Now, is he going to play a whole heck of a lot in the first preseason game? No, it'll be pretty vanilla, maybe a series or two. But to see him out there, I'm kind of expecting a throwdown because it has to be ramped up. It has to be where Matt Patricia's guys want to prove what their mettle is versus Bill Belichick and the Patriots. It's going to be exciting to have the Patriots in Allen Park, man. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, definitely, and especially if Trey Flowers can get on the field for that, that'll even amp it up even more. Being coming straight from the Super Bowl champions.
No doubt about it. You can follow Jason on Twitter at Jarvie the King. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Jason, this has been episode 199. We are 1 week away from episode 200. I posted on Twitter the other day that I just archived the 1,500th podcast that we've done. We've done a little bit more. Not every single podcast has been archived, but the majority of them have. So in the neighborhood, we've recorded on this network 1,500 different podcasts.
That's nuts.
It's crazy. 200 with us already. It's good times, man. And to see where we came from, to see where we're at. I've enjoyed podcasting with you, and I always enjoy dialing up your phone and having a conversation. And I look forward to 200 more, baby.
Absolutely. Maybe for 200, I can actually come into the studio.
Maybe you could come visit me.
Maybe you can unlock the doors and let me in.
No doubt about it. For Jason Jarvie, I'm John Macaroon. Thank you for downloading the latest edition of the Motor City Sports Rant. You can find all the podcasts anywhere your favorite podcasts are hosted. You can just search Detroit Sports Podcast, and you can find us, the great content, and we greatly appreciate it. See you, Jason.
Later.
Okay, nice idiot. F you. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.